have time for one more question, sorry, because the senator has to prepare for the quorum.
Well, let's take two.
Two more questions, and I just want to say that you guys can always communicate with us at YearlyKos.com. You can come to the blog, you can get in touch. You all know how to get, most of you know how to get in touch with me personally. This is a give and take. So even though we can't answer all your questions right now, please feel free to contact me, and I will get those questions in and we'll answer as many as we can. All right, so go back over there, Richard.
Paul Young Ron in San Francisco. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for having gone on the record saying that you would be willing to repeal the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I wanted to have the opportunity to ask you about 4 other pieces of legislation that happened during the Clinton years, and whether you would be willing to also advocate their repeal. The Defense of Marriage Act, the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, NAFTA, and the Welfare Reform of 1996.
Well, first, let me say I've been on the record against Don't Ask, Don't Tell since '99. And I believe that it was the best that could be gotten in the political circumstances that existed at the time. It has been, in my view, not implemented appropriately, and a lot of very brave and dedicated Americans have been discharged from the military at, I would believe, the cost to our military readiness, particularly those who have missions that are directly related to our security. And it's just mind-boggling that we would dismiss linguists, for example. So I'm hoping that as president, I can lead the effort to repeal it and to put the concerns about it behind us. As I've said in a couple of different settings, you know, I love this Barry Goldwater quote, you don't have to be straight to shoot straight. And we should give every single American who's willing to serve their country the chance to do so under the code of military justice, so that your behavior, not your status or your sexual orientation, determines your performance and your promotion. Secondly, DOMA, I believe that DOMA served a very important purpose. I was one of the architects of the strategy against the marriage amendment to the Constitution, and DOMA gave us a bright line to be able to hold back the votes that were building up to do what I consider to be absolutely abominable, and that would be to amend the Constitution to enshrine discrimination. I believe marriage should be left to the states. I support civil unions, as I've said many times, with full equality of benefits. And so I think that DOMA appropriately put the responsibility in the states where it has historically belonged, and I think you're beginning to see states take actions. I think it's Part 3 of DOMA needs to be repealed, because Part 3 stands in the way of the full extension of federal benefits, and I support that. So that's first. Secondly, telecommunications, 96, you'll have to ask Al Gore. We've had a lot of media consolidation. We've had some good competition. We have a lot that we need to do to begin to create a more competitive framework. And, Al was very involved in designing and pushing that through. And he's an expert, I'm not. And so I don't want to, I like what the FCC is looking at doing about maintaining more competition by the auction of the spectrum. So, we've got to take a hard look at this. And I don't want to say something that I may not, really support. So I've got to look at that more closely. NAFTA, I have said that NAFTA did not realize the benefits that it was promised for a number of reasons. And in fact, as a senator from New York, I issued a report that talked about all the problems that business people and farmers had in New York getting their products into Canada. This is not just about Mexico. This is about the tripartite relationship. So I think we have to generally have smarter trade agreements that not only have labor and environmental standards, which I fully support, but really have an ongoing evaluation of the impact of trade agreements. That's why I have legislation to have the analysis of what actually has happened compared to what was promised, both unintended and intended consequences, be part of the ongoing monitoring of the trade agreements. And I do think we've got to find ways to work with our neighbors in the hemisphere more closely, including trying to think of ways we can stimulate job creation and economic development to the south, which I think is a win-win if we can figure out how to do it. With respect to welfare reform, I think the positive consequences of welfare reform far outweigh the negative, and the regret that I have is that in the last 6.5 years, the work that we did to try to protect medical care and educational benefits for people getting off of welfare and working at low-wage jobs have been the subject of attacks by the Bush administration. The education program, which was key to my support for the original legislation, was severely cut back. And I think that was a mistake, and I'd like to reverse that. I believe that we should encourage people to continue with education as much as possible. And we're in this big fight now about health care for children, a combination of Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, something that I helped to start when I was First Lady. We should obviously stand against the Bush threat to veto what we passed in the Senate and the House last week. And eventually we need to get to universal health care so we don't have these battles. But it's one thing.